Oh, there it is. Yay. Thank you, friend. All right. And it says we are in fact live now, so that's very exciting. There's always just that momentary lag. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Third Eye Salon today. Whether you have been here many a times or you're first time here, we're so excited that you are with us. And on Third Eye Salon, in each and every show, we take a fresh look between the veils of reality. And today we are taking a fresh look between the veils of what it means to be a sound healer, what sound healing is, and how it is to be a conduit for the angelic realm. So before we get going, let's see who is in the salon today. Why, of course, Linda Coulter-Burge is here, psychic and conscious business coach. Linda, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited for this topic with Phyllis and happy that my peeps are here to join us today online. I love you guys. You give me such a lift every weekend. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And can you tell us who's there so far? Do you see any names that you can share?
I can't because I have so many windows open right now that I have to close some windows so that I can actually see what's happening.
No worries at all. But we do see you there, and we're excited that you were with us. And let me see if it shows up on my side. It says Laura Holland. Laura Holland is here.
Hi, Laura.
Hey, Laura. She's so wonderful. Okay, so I also wanted to, normally I would be introducing Jillian at this point, but Jillian Leonard is not with us this week because her grandmother passed just yesterday. And so we can send their family some love light. And they knew that this was coming. So this is actually more of a release for her grandmother, who is 90. So she had a really long, good run. And so this is, you know, even though the family is heavy-hearted, we also know that her grandmother is just skipping through heaven right now, having the time of her afterlife. And Jillian just wanted everyone to know that she did pass with all of her daughters around her. And now she's going to be happy because she's with with Jillian's grandfather on the other side. So it's a happy, sad thing. And we just lift up Jillian and her family in love light today. And of course, we have our wonderful guest, Phyllis Douglas, aka Vox Angelus. Phyllis, thank you for being here with us. We're so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a blast. We talk a lot about ETs, not a lot about the angelic. So it's nice to have to switch up the conversation. And so this is going to be a great dive into that. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into Miss Phyllis's bio, and that is that Linda, yes, she is the bouncer. She is the your engager and bouncer on the live stream chat. So if there's somebody who's just having a hard time being in the chat, Linda's policy is play nice or get out. And so she will lovingly she'll give you a couple of warnings, and then she'll lovingly escort you out if you're just having a hard time being respectful to other people, because we don't do disrespect here. We just don't do it. So we want you to know that down in our box below, in our description box, we have got our Facebook event page. We would love for you to join that. We've got our Facebook group. If you really want to get in on our conversations, we had such a great week this week talking about the angelic realm and talking about music that inspires us. It was a lovely, rich conversation all week long. So feel free to join our Facebook group. And then also we've got our little donation for you can buy us a virtual coffee down there. So almost every week someone supports us and gives us some love, some financial love. So we always say thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you for all the donations you've already given. Yeah, it's just super appreciated. It really helps out everything. And then we've got the invitation to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, hit the notification bell so that way you know when we go live, because sometimes it's not always on time. And also to share our content, because we don't have any ads going. We turned off the ads on our YouTube, so therefore YouTube's like, we just won't promote you then. So if we need you to help promote us, so that way we can continue to thrive and grow and expand our community here. So let's get into Phyllis's bio, and so you can know more about her, so we can do a deep dive into her experiences. All right, so Phyllis Douglas is an author, healer, seer, prophetess, alchemist and licensed massage therapist, and is certified or has studied for many years within the field of energy, medicine, shamanism, spirituality, and mysticism. She works with the body, mind, and soul using advanced manual therapies, energetic healing methods, and the profound use of sound as a creative force of expression. Phyllis considers her vocal alchemy music to be a very spiritual and performative art form that arises from the higher spaces within and expresses through her from the non material world as divinely encoded vibrational sound, frequency, patterns, and light with deep purpose and passion. Phyllis is a shaman of sound, a Nagual of the inner tonal light. We're going to ask Phyllis about that more later on in our conversation. As a direct conduit of the divine order of the Elohim, which we'll also ask her about, her work as a vocal alchemist initiates healing and transformation through the innate mechanisms held within the physical and energetic bodies and mind, which hold the unparalleled ability to transform, spiritually transfigure, and heal on all levels. Phyllis also creates conscious sacred artifacts under the guidance and direction of the Elohim as spiritual healing tools and tools of ascension. A written sacred artifact recently published with the Angels is her newest book, One Journey to a New Way of Being, which includes a journey to attain higher knowledge, spiritual awakening, ascension, and healing through frequency encoded images and downloadable audio files in the angelic language. And of course, we have Phyllis's links down below as well. So we encourage you to go check out her page and her books. Her page is amazing, by the way. It's just chock full. It's like a library on her website. It's amazing. So we ask that you would go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you're excited about sound healing, whether you've experienced it or you want to experience it. If you are into the conversation about sound healing and how that works and how that can transform your life and the world, give us some love. Give us a thumbs up. All right. Thank you, Miss Phyllis, again for being here. We are excited to have you. I want to get into your story, and I want to really start at the beginning. I want to start at because I feel like you've got a huge transformational moment I want to get up to, but I feel like it's important for people to understand that you came in with an awareness. You remembered being born. Can you tell us about that?
Oh
Your memory
goodness,
of being
that's
born?
way back. Yeah, it's very interesting because you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I was born awake," right? So I was born with conscious awareness. So I actually do remember being born, and I do remember the of being asked by the divine order of the Elohim to come back for specific, come back into a physical incarnation for a specific purpose. And I said yes. And so when I was at the point of ensoulment, there was all of a sudden, oh my God, why did I agree to this? There was like, ah! And I do remember being born. And so after I came into the world, then it was like that was kind of gone. Right. But I do remember now. It was like later I remembered the pathway into this world. And so it was about, I always had like invisible friends and conversations, right? And when I was 4 years old, I realized because I had more of an awareness in the and level of communication with these beings that were always around me. And then I understood that they were angels. So the angels have actually been around me, well, probably since I was born. And they've always served as like teachers and guides this entire time. Even have saved my life a couple times. They've always told me that they're. Sometimes they told me, but sometimes it was all the time. I would say there's a feeling of greater purpose, even when I was really young. There was that feeling of greater purpose, so that no matter what was going on in my life, I knew that that moment wouldn't be held. It's like it was just a moment in time. It was just an experience. And the next moment was going to be there was going to be a shift, a change, right? And so that has always been the case in my life.
Well, I want to hear about you being what we call a psychic kid, because you could see the angels when you were a kid. So you had this awareness or you can remember agreeing to come back and say, yes, I'll come back to the earth one more time. Do you feel like this is your last incarnation?
I do.
Yeah. So it was like one more time for the big push. What I imagine, I'm kind of filling in the blanks here, but what I imagine is, oh, there's a big push, Phyllis. Would you come back in? And of course, your name wasn't Phyllis on the other side. But they're saying this to you. Would you come back in and be Phyllis and be this conduit for the angelic realm? And you were like, sure. And then when you get here, you're like, oh God, what did I agree to? What do I agree to? Which I think is, I think that's really common once you get back into the density, you're like, oh my God, again, this again. But when you came into being a psychic kid, what were you seeing? What were you experiencing as a kid?
Everything. I was always, it was normal for me, and I didn't understand that other people weren't like me, and I never actually voiced the differentiations about what I might be seeing and what I later acknowledged that other people were not seeing, right? But I would see everything. I mean, I could see the angels and have conversations. I could see, spirits, and past loved ones would visit me, those that I never even, knew. When I was about 6 years old, this gentleman would visit me. For about a period of 4 years, he would periodically, at least once a week, I could see him walk from the corner of the room, and he would just sit on the end of my bed and smile at me. He would never say anything. And when I was in my 30s, we were going through these boxes in my parents' basement, and there was a photo album, and there he was. And it turned out it was like kind of an uncle from past. I mean, nobody even had any reference to this man, but
Oh, wow.
he would always visit me. But I would also, I'll tell you some stories first, and then I'll explain what the angels had said in context.
Yeah.
I would always have these experiences, good and bad. So I don't know how much I actually slept ever, but often I was one of those children I was afraid of the dark often. So I would be like under the blanket with a flashlight because I just got so tired of being kind of bothered, right? And sometimes bullied as well. And there were always beings there. And so, there were often times that, someone that I couldn't see, would come and sit on the bed. The bed would come down and I would feel them and I'd be like, hello, what's there? But there would also be beings that would come and visit and stare at me, or some would talk, or I would have visions of things that I didn't really understand, especially past things. So I don't know if they were kind of past lives, experience, or, whatever that was. But I would also have negative experiences as well. I'd, had things that, like, the blanket on my bed would slowly be pulled, away, exposing me from underneath. I've had presences, grab at me, that type of thing. And I would always just kind of flip on the light and then it would stop, right? And I had one particular experience, though. Often I could hear breathing, and I'd be under my blanket. But one experience I had was very intensely profound for me, was that something had grabbed my ankle. And when you're in that state, you don't really know if you're in a dream or if you're awake type thing. But I was fighting, and I had this sense that you are fighting for your life, and something had grabbed my ankle and was pulling me off the end of the bed. And I was fighting to pull the switch on my bedside lamp. And I remember making, just in fact, lunging, and I pulled the switch. The light came on and it stopped, and I was just, breathing. But I realized, oh, that wasn't a dream, because the top mattress was like halfway off. The blankets were off. And when I looked down at my ankle, there were fingerprints, compression marks there.
Wow.
So I knew that was not a dream, that was real, right? But things like that would happen. But the interesting thing about it was, throughout all of this, I was never afraid beyond that moment. There was always that sense that something resided always behind me,
Mm.
or that sense that I was protected, I was safe. And then part of me when I was older was like, well, if I'm so safe and protected, why is this happening? But later I was asking the angels, I said, why did I have to experience these things? And they said, because in order to do the work that you are here to do, you had to understand what is real and what is not. Right.
Oh,
And really teaching me about the non-physical world and good and bad and good and evil, you might call it, that these things do exist. Right? Because most of the time, because I was raised religiously, you're thinking bad, evil, hell, right, from a religious
right,
standpoint.
right.
But I knew that not to be true as well. And my Sunday school teacher did not. She was so frustrated with me because I would ask these questions all the time, and then finally I just stopped going to Sunday school. Because I was like, God doesn't have it in for me, this type of thing. It was all of that, and I didn't believe in the devil, and it just didn't, none of it made sense to me. I
Mm.
just knew that love was the key. Always love. And even at that age, I didn't quite understand that either, but it was just an inner knowing. So I've always known that. So I had to, in later years, when my daughter was old enough, the angels were saying, you should go see, um, it was the paranormal movies. And I had seen them and it was kind of freaked me out. I was like, why do I want to go see that? And they said, we really want you to see them in the context of reality. Reality. And you'll have this understanding that, oh, I experienced a lot of that in my childhood as well. So I watched it again, and I had, when I had first watched them, I was afraid. It was like scary, uh, and that was earlier on. But when I watched them, it was from a higher perspective, and it was totally different. And something then settled, kind of within me, like
Mm.
that understanding. So I've known throughout my path that things happen. I've been attacked. I've been attacked in the astral. All of these things have happened, but
Mhm.
I'm a warrior. And that's been a key truth to me, and a warrior without effort.
Mm.
There's something within me, there's that knowledge, that knowing, there's something that I've brought in that's come forward that allows me the deeper understanding that there is no need to be afraid. There is no need to have fear.
So I wanted to ask you, in terms of your experiences of being pulled out of the bed and having this astral attack, just kind of giving us a wider view into that, because it had purpose.
Hmm.
It had to do with informing you about who you really are and what your resources truly are. Because sometimes we don't understand our resources and what we're capable of until we face that dark night, and then it's like, oh my God, I'm powerful. Like, we kind of need that like shake up to realize that we can actually impact our reality in a major way. Were the beings that were attacking you, would you call them demonic? Were they lost souls? Like, what was attacking you from the other side?
When I was a child, I have absolutely really no idea. Now I would just call them, there's tricksters, there's negative
Mm.
beings. I think one of the key things, probably the darkest thing, would have been being pulled out of bed, right? Because there was really a sense of being pulled from my reality in this world to somewhere else that I did not want to be at
Oh.
any cost, right? That was kind of one of my key moments of understanding. But I also understand, especially now, and I did then, I kind of, that the angels always said, you had these experiences, but we would have never allowed it to go beyond a certain point. You were
Mm.
never, um, you were never going to be harmed.
Okay.
Yeah. But now in later years, I've had people send me things or stuff, right? Uh, So, and it's just, I think it's just really part of the game. Right.
People send you things?
Yeah, and one of the things is at the level of the work that I do, I don't know how to word it with that. It's like you're bright and things see you.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And so with some of the work that I do, especially we had a key thing that happened in one of our retreats, and a lot of times things will just will come to attack you or to
Uh,
attempt to stop you from doing what it is that you do,
yep,
or
yep.
come forward to create fear within you to diminish your spirit, to keep you from moving forward.
Okay. Yeah, I guess like you probably so it's really sort of like, yeah, the brighter you shine, the more. I mean, that's it's the whole thing with psychic kids is the reason that psychic kids have these experiences is because their light is on and they have no idea that it's on, but then that starts to attract both the light and the dark because you can be seen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a matter of embodying that. Like, yes, I can be seen, but it's going to be on my terms, and that's kind of the maturation as you come into your power. Would you agree with that?
I would, and it's interesting because I was essentially born that way. Later
Mhm.
years, I found out that it's actually in my ancestry and so forth
Oh,
as
tell us.
well. So, I've got grandparents on both sides, and I can track back all the way to South Africa, witch doctors and voodoo and all of that, and healer types and so forth, psychics and seers.
Mm.
My mother, later years, I found out, was a prophetess and a very good one, but it was something that she never talked about, and she had tried to turn off. And my sister and I were discussing that. We're like, nah, she never turned that off. She wasn't, it wasn't actually operating at a conscious level, but she was actually utilizing it within her life, within her work, day-to-day activities and so forth.
Mhm.
But she told me that. So what I understood was that, oh, this, the last few years I've really been guided to go back to my roots and to begin to work with my ancestors. So there were many gifts that have come forward from that, and just a higher understanding and wisdom about who I am and where I came from, right? Because we are our ancestors because their blood is flowing through our veins. And so it was really an acknowledgement about the power and the wisdom that we carry from our ancestors, but being able to really acknowledge that and bring it forward within this present life was something that was very important. The other understanding within just this last year was that, last 2 years, was that I've always been like this helium balloon flying around. I have never, in my earlier life, I never had any training. I have the ability to do pretty much anything, but I'd never been, quote, trained by anyone to do that. It
Mm.
was natural ability or non physical beings were guiding me. And so I never had physical teachings or physical or the grounding of a foundation, right? I had never had anyone telling me I needed protection or I couldn't do something. So I think that is really the key that a lot of people say, no, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? I never
Mm.
had any of that. So there was a simplicity in being able to access different abilities and so forth because no one ever told me that I couldn't. And that's one of the key things that I tell people now in my teachings is that I'm not here to tell you that you can't because I know that you can, right?
Mhm.
You're the only one that thinks that holds the understanding that you cannot do something, right?
Mm.
Irregardless of what people outside of you are telling you. So it was just within the last couple of years that the angels told me, okay, they've guided me to certain people saying that we want you to take this course or talk with them or be mentored by them because now is a time that you need to create a foundation. You need to root yourself. And so that's really what I've been doing in this past year is
Mm.
rooting everything that I am within the physical world as well, right? Because I'm working multidimensionally, but you can't just be out there because now, when we're talking about ascension, it's really what the angels are like, no, it's like descension. The light is coming down within the physical vessel, right? The truth of who you are, your soul essence is coming down within and anchoring within this physical vessel so that it can express itself out into the world. And so when they talk about, people talk about what is it? Enlightenment, that word. I always hate all those words, but they talk about enlightenment, and they're like, no, instead of en, it's in. It's about enlightenment, right? And they've always shared the understanding that in that enlightened state, you are a brilliant being, a brilliant beacon, a brilliant light. And in that radiance is your protection. And they've always come back to, last couple of years especially, Jesus has come to me all the time. And they kept saying, be like Jesus of Nazareth. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I was in a meditation once with a Stargate, and it was a workshop. And quite profoundly, Jesus came to me and stated that, I am here to teach you how to be radiant, to activate your radiance from within. And so he's like, and I was going to give him a hug. He's no, wait, I want to do teaching first. It was like really funny. And so he said, you just do this. And it was just like, he went, and he did that with his hands. And I was almost bowled over, just this beautiful, radiant light, this intense, loving nature of being as well, just hit me. And he said, okay, now you try. And I was just like, like this little spark. I don't know. I need some kerosene or something. And I didn't know how that was the thing. I knew it was within me, but it was so funny. And I actually stayed. I think my radiance is constipated. And so he laughed. And he said, no. And so I just went, I thought, and I dropped into my heart, and I did that. I just went, and it was like supernova, this energy shooting out. And I was like, whoa, wow. Okay. And the thing was, I was like, that was easy. And when you don't think about it, when your mind isn't cluttered, when you don't have like that fear that you can't do something and all of that. And throughout the years of working with the angels, one of their key sayings is, human beings love to muddy up the waters when we have made it so explicitly simple. And I use that phrase all of the time, with the understanding that there's so many methodologies and technologies and techniques or whatever that, people are teaching. And one of the things that I have really struggled with in the beginning, and now I can access with ease, is that they were like, you need to let all of that go. You need to let all of the teachings go. You need to let all of the methods that you've learned go. You need to let all of the fear points, they called it, because every training I've ever been in, except with my key benefactor, a friend and mentor, Coyote the Blind, has always had an element of fear. They were always teaching some way to protect yourself. And they're like, no. So I had to let go of all of that. And there's been a couple times in my life where I was operating from this clean slate. And I had this vision once of God. It was a big chalkboard with a bunch of writing and stuff on it and diagrams and things. And a hand comes in with an eraser and started up the corner. And it was just, and I was like, no. And gradually I would have this vision, and the chalkboard was a little emptier. And I went to, the last time I had the vision was there was just a little bit, and a finger pointed, and it was, and I erased it. And I was thinking, and all of a sudden I was like, dropped into this void of understanding that nothing is real. Everything is an illusion. So from this point forward, you are the creator. And it is that sense of being undefinable because we spend so much time in our lives being defined by something that in itself is diminishing the truth of who we are.
Mm,
So it's that sense of I am not this body. I am not Phyllis Douglas. I am not a healer. I am not a mother. I am not a yoga teacher. Whatever it is. I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer. Those are just experiences. Those are things that we are here in this lifetime to experience. And it has a title and a name, but that does not define who we are. We are undefinable. We are these illuminated, expansive, divine, eternal beings here in this physical vessel within this world to just simply have experiences. So from that standpoint, when you think about things as experiences, it's much easier to let things go because it's kind of like, that was a really bad experience. And so you can kind of sit back and think, okay, what did I learn from that?
exactly.
Not to do this, this, and that, but I'm just going to let that go. And I'm going to experience something else. I'm going to experience something different in that next moment. And so that is what I've been doing. At first, I was trying to do that. And they're like, you need to stop trying and just do it. Right?
Which is always like that. That phrase is always like, I think we stumble over that because it's so challenging to know how to do and not try. How do you do without trying? How do you do without trying? So that's a huge shifting point.
Yeah, when we are, I was told to try to release the word try from my vocabulary. Because when we're trying to do something, there's a preconceived notion as to how we're going to do it and what we're going to attain from it. But the world doesn't work that way either. And when we're trying to do something, there's a knowledge, we're interjecting ourselves into it as in we know best. We know how to do it. We know what is going to happen. Typically what that is doing is it is actually creating friction or it's creating a block. Right? Whereas if we don't just try to do it and from the wisdom of the moment, we just step forward and say, I'm going to do this, then we step out of that state of free will into asking the universe, okay, I'm going to do this, so you better jump in line and guide me, help me along. And so the angels are like, we're here, but you keep asking for this, but you haven't taken a step towards it yet. And so we're just waiting here for you to decide, for you to commit, right, to the fact that that is what you want. Because when you actually commit, you've stepped in fully into that. And then all of a sudden they can help and guide you. That's when the synchronicities and so forth happen. But if you're sitting back and just trying, it does not work. You have to do, right?
Well, Linda, do you want to hop in and ask some questions? I want to make sure your voice is heard in here.
So yes. I want to back up a little bit because you mentioned at the very beginning reality. Multiple times you talked about reality. And I would love for you to give your definition of reality.
Ooh, that's a new question.
For me, reality is however I am perceiving in the moment. And that is from our assemblage point, our filter, our paradigm that we're operating under. So if you change your paradigm, if you make a new decision, if you do something differently, your reality is going to shift in the moment, right? So for me, my reality is based upon my perception of what it is I'm perceiving. I know that's kind of convoluted, right? So my reality is whatever it is that I'm creating in the moment or have created for this moment, right? Because reality is an illusion. So as a creator being, we can create just like that. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. And I have this curiosity around our perceptions of evil, our perceptions of it's interesting when you look at different cultures, those beings that come into the culture tend to be those things we've grown up learning to be afraid of, right?
Exactly.
So how much of those in your perception are actual beings of some sort, and how much are things that we're creating because of our indoctrination in wanting to believe that there is good versus evil?
It's a little bit of both. We're creating a paradigm when we're first born and we're within our family life and so forth. There is a certain paradigm being structured around us, right? And so if we don't choose to change that paradigm, or are able to come out of it and shift into something else, like a new truth, right? A lot of times people are so embedded within a paradigm or an understanding of how the world works or their world works, or how they should act, or how things truly are, right? They get stuck in there because often there's new truths and information that come forward, but they're so stuck with blinders on that they never see anything different. And in order to shift out of the present paradigm, we have to have a new understanding, right? There's nothing to shift us unless there's a new understanding or a new truth or something that totally just unwedges us. All of a sudden it's like, oh my God, wait. I don't understand that, right? There has to be something. There has to be something that wheedles its way in so that all of a sudden when you're going about your daily life, you're like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. Then you open the door to a new understanding. And that's really what's happening on the planet now, is the opening of these doors to a new understanding, and the hope that people are going to begin to see, hear, feel, and walk through that door, that gateway, right? So that's, we're creating a new paradigm because people are all of a sudden understanding the truth around certain issues, right? Or their own personal truth, right? So a lot of people are operating, especially those who were key. I'm not picking on religion, but typically those who were raised in the church, so forth, they're going to have a different paradigm that they're operating under. And depending on the church, there is bad and good and evil and, all of that. And they are going to believe it because that is held within their belief system until something changes that they don't believe it any longer, right? So you always have to have a new idea, a new thought has to come in, right? There has to be a change.
You're like a natural teacher. You just like, it's like, I feel like we press a button and this teaching just pours out of you. I wanted to ask you, do you have another question, Linda, before I hop into my next bit, my next part?
I did, but it went as soon as you start talking, so I'll
Oh,
come back to
darn.
it.
Okay. Okay. My apologies. So, I'm very distracting. No, so I wanted to ask Phyllis if she would tell us about her, because there's one thing of being a psychic kid and being like, there are angels around me, there are dark forces around me, and kind of having this awareness, just extrasensory awareness, which is very natural. And then coming into your angelic identity, and that was sort of a crossover moment for you where you're like, oh, I'm not just hanging out with angels, I am one. And so that's a bit of a different thing. And I want to ask you, before you go into that, do you hear their angelic voices in your head, or is it external? Is it clairaudient? Because like Linda's clairaudient and she hears lots of things outside of her head that are guiding her, and I'm wondering how you experience it.
It depends on what I'm doing, both.
Both. I think Linda has both too.
Or it just kind of
Yeah, I
flows,
have both.
through.
Okay, or you're
If
just
I'm doing my
conduiting.
work in like an embodied state, it typically, I connect and I become them and it just flows through. So it just
Yep.
depends on the work that I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for clarifying, because it's nice to know how it works for different people, right? And that you can have a variety of all three styles of being a conduit. So then let us hear about your experience of when you came to understand who you really. Oh, Linda has a question now. She remembers
Okay.
it. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah. So it's less of a question, more of a comment that I really appreciated your discussion of ascension versus descension, of bringing things down to earth, bringing that we're creating that embodiment. I mean, it's the heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's what we're doing here, in my opinion, that we're not, for me, my personal opinion is we're not having this this ascension where there's going to be a divide and some will go and some won't. It's that we're bringing it into the earth realm, and that there will be some that can walk through the turmoil with more peace and bring that love into the everyday, versus some that are in fear. And that's the divide. Can you just really quickly talk about that a little bit more?
It's a little bit of both. There's three different things. Yes, we're bringing heaven to earth, but there's also there are some people that don't want that to happen and will never be in alignment with that. And then those people will just choose to leave in whatever way, shape, or form they choose to leave, right? Then there are those that are kind of in between that are going to take a little more time. They need those people to guide them and lead by example, so that they truly begin to see, hear, feel that there is a shift happening and they can be part of it if they just let go, right? And then there are people like ourselves that are kind of here for that purpose, to be those guides, right? Who have voyaged before them, that are kind of leading into a new way of being, or a new world, as it were. So there's, I mean, you're talking about the multiple dimensions that are all time, it's all together. So there's always going to be a little bit of everything, but you can shift your level of consciousness to be here versus here, or versus there. Does that kind of make sense? And it's just like it is now. People are going to have different experiences. If you're operating from a higher level of consciousness, then you're going to have a totally different experience than somebody over here, even when you're looking at or experiencing the same thing. That's still going to exist, because there still needs to be a polarity to everything, right? There will always be a polarity, because that creates balance. And we always have to have that balance point. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, I like that you also said we can be experiencing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's our perception of that.
Exactly. And that comes from our paradigm. That comes from how we filter everything, our experience of the world, and what
right.
our thoughts and our actions and so forth. So
I think there's this underlying piece where people, that why do bad things happen to good people? Well, because they do. I mean, it's just, it doesn't matter whether you're good or bad, or it's just is, and it's your opportunity to experience it in a different way.
I will say something about that. Someone asked, but why does this happen? Mm-hmm. Well, if you're stuck in the, oh my God, I'm the victim type of thing, then that makes it a whole lot worse. So, I asked the angels about that. And first it was like, why did I have to experience all this tumultuous stuff in my life? I mean, that stunk. Right? Mm-hmm. I've had a tumultuous life and earlier on, right? And all these things happening. Well, some of the things that happen, I acknowledge on a higher level now, is that it happened because I was being affronted by all of these higher energies and stuff. And at that point in time, I had no clue what to do with them or what they were. All right. And that caused a lot of things to happen within my life that didn't really need to happen, right? A lot of anxiety and things like that, because I have you have this physical vessel, this container, and you have all of this energy wanting to come in, and it's hitting up, against whatever's happening within your life, right? And I think that's happening to a lot of people. So if you're not letting go of the past, or you don't know to let go of the past, then there's this external force that just seems to be catapulting you through life in a not so comfortable way, right? So one of the things that I've understood is this: we're in this physical life to have experiences, And yes, we did come into this life to have particular experiences as well. And those particular experiences can lead to other experiences and so forth. So our first experience is our birth into this world. Then you have all these experiences between the hyphens of the date of our birth and the date of our passing. Our final experience is our final last breath as we make our final transition. All life is a number of experiences, right? So when we, depending on if we actually approach an experience from a higher point of perception or higher understanding that we are not this body, right? We have this guidance, we have this higher guidance. We are individuations of infinite source, right? Having a physical experience. When you actually allow yourself to understand that, then you can connect with that. And, what I came to understand was that I could allow myself to be down here, or I could be like up here with a breath. And then allow the higher guidance to guide me through the minefield that has been created, right? Or I could just be down there trying to make it through the minefield I've created on my own. I mean, which would you rather experience, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people are trying to find their way through the minefield because they don't want to let go, and they don't believe, maybe. It could be a belief system. And so they're always down trying to make it through the minefields on their own. When there's infinite possibilities, and there's all of this help and guidance that's up there. But it's the ability to kind of let go and understand and believe in something else and truth.
And
I know.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know my husband will often say something doom and gloom and say, we are going to, and I said, it's this week, Himosari. No, you might, but I have other plans.
What's this week, Himosabi?
To write that down. No.
You're free to have that decision if you want, but I'm choosing a different path.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's what we focus on. I mean, I see these things like happen and just like this magnet attracting, and it's like, no, keep that over there. I'm not going to have that in my space. And it took a long time for me to create that boundary and that separation and be able to say, go for it. I'm not going to judge you, but I'm not going to take it either.
Right. Drive your car off the cliff if you want to, but I'll still be here when you decide to crawl your way back up the cliff. So yeah, that's intense. And I wanted to say, I want to get into Phyllis's story of angelic stuff, but I wanted to say, like, just to reflect my own experience last night, hanging out next to my local lake, and hanging out with my guides, and just looking at my life and looking at what I create and how I choose. And there was this awareness of, like, anytime I've not chosen my higher path, which is there's no judgment, but anytime I've not done that, I've been working against myself. And it just became this thing of like, oh, I've worked against myself in, not having a romantic relationship, because I've somehow worked against myself there. I've worked myself against not being able to do this or do that, because there was some part of me that said, oh, that's not for me. It's too much. I've disqualified myself in advance. And it was me doing it, as opposed to it was just a great way of like pulling myself out of the why me, which I already know about, but it was like taking even a bigger step backward and being like, look where you've turned the current actively against yourself so you could stay smaller, because smaller is safe somehow. And even though I worked on this, there's always like more levels, at least in where I am right now, of like, why don't do that? If you don't want that experience, don't do that anymore. So now, Miss Phyllis, will you guide us into your experience of connecting with your angelic family? I'm so excited to hear this.
Yes, and the angels would like to share that humans are very adept at creating barriers. And much of the time, there's so much blame on other people or other things that are happening externally. They're not realizing that the barrier that they're feeling, they actually created. It's like a form of self-sabotage that comes
Yes.
from the
Yes.
paradigm that you're living with under. And Keely, one of the things is if you wish to awaken and quote ascend, right? I kind of hate that word. I haven't found any other words. I just don't like the key new agey words. But anyway, and it's so funny. It's over the years it's annoyed me even more. But I have to use them because that's all there is. But you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Because on a day-to-day basis, if we're comfortable, we're stuck. We're not moving, nothing's shifting, right? But if we're making a new decision and life is changing and evolving and shifting, there's going to be discomfort. So a lot of people are more interested in their comfort, irregardless of how horrible their lives might be, right? It's comfortable because it's familiar,
Exactly.
right? So we create these barriers out of fear and so forth. So one of the things I've had to recognize is that's me. Okay, what is it that I am what is it that I'm afraid of that's keeping me from moving forward, right? So that's something that people just need to kind of go inward and begin to recognize for themselves.
Amen.
So for me, when I was a child, I would always just, my sister always said, you always had like this secret language. You would always be gobbledygook and, and you know, and also when I was a kid, right? And I was talking, I was talking to the angels in my kid speak. And so I had realized this, and you know, there's been a lot of realizations and epiphanies. You know how you go through all of this, and all of a sudden, the puzzle pieces start to come together and create this image. And so I had always done this, and it wasn't that long, it's several many years ago now, but I was working with a client, and you know, I've always sung in my life. But the angels came in and said, you're going to begin singing to your clients. And I was like, okay. So I leaned down and I whispered in my client's ear and I said, apparently, I am going to begin singing to you. And they were like, okay, yeah, I'm down with that. So, and I began to sing. And then they were telling me how that made them feel. So it was like the intonations. It wasn't like singing a song, but I was singing tones and within this language, right? That had all of a sudden started to develop. And I had used it at various, it would just come out. I remember it was a couple of years before that, and a possum had gotten in our pool, got it right, and I was trying to save it. It was, but it had drowned. But I didn't realize it had drowned. I like pulled it out, and you know how the stuff. But it happened again, so at least I thought it had drowned. I pulled it out and it was laying there. And I just began this long prayer thing over it in this language. And I remember my daughter was young and he said, Daddy, Mommy's like talking in that weird language again. And I was like, what? It just came out. It was weird. So I saw it move. And so we just brought it to the front yard in a box. And then when it, because they freeze when they're afraid. So it unfroze and walked away in the night. But I had used that language. So the key thing that happened was a friend of mine wanted to go up to Mount Shasta for this energetic healing workshop. I don't even remember what it was. But I said, okay. So we went up there and I knew something, and this has happened, and I can talk about that later. But whenever they say there's going to be a lot of people and then there's only 2 or 3, I know for a fact in my life that something's going to happen. And typically something's going to happen to me, or I'm going to be associated with it in some form. That's always been the case. And instead of like 8 people, it was 2. That was me and my friend. And so I'm thinking, oh, I had this harbinger of doom over me. Like, what do you have planned, right? And so she was teaching this energetic thing, and I was the first one to go on the table because she said, well, as I'm laying on the table, she said, I was just guided, and this never happens, to open your halo, right? And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. So she was doing this work, and then I just left my body. And I was out, you know, with the angels. I remember these pillars, and there was a whole group of angels, and we were talking, and I was talking in the angelic language, and we were having a discussion and all of this, not aware that she was having a challenge actually bringing me back to my body. So it took her 20 minutes. So she was like shaking my foot. I remember I'm like, what? You know, and I came back and I was like, whoa, because I had been in a whole nother space, came back into my body. She asked me a question and I spoke, and it was in my angelical language. I was not able to speak English for 7.5 hours, which freaked me out totally because I was supposed to go home the next day, and I was like, my husband will never understand if I'm speaking some foreign angelic language, right? Uh, but it was 7.5 hours, and I was writing notes to people. I was like, "Oh, my throat!" right now, we're going out to eat, or pointing at the menu. It was the strangest thing. So I was speaking in this language, and I could hear it in English. I could hear English, but when I opened my mouth to speak, it came out in an angelical language. And so that's when it was um, fully imbued or embedded or whatever the word is. Uh, it came through. And so from that point on, more and more so, I was speaking in my angelical language, being able to sometimes translate what they were saying, but typically there's no need to translate. But it just began to express more and more at a higher level through me, and then I was basically guided as to why, who I am, you know. And it's like, oh, you're an angelic. And I was like, okay, I was a seraphim angel. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Um, so I was also, what did I learn lately? I was a creator god when the world first began to be created. And, you know, none of that really matters. I'm kind of like, oh, great, I'm sure I'm bringing something forward into this time. Uh, but so then I understood that, oh, I'm healing with my voice and all of this is happening. Oh, it's an activation, a transmission. It just began to grow and flow from that point. And then I began signing, and then I could also write in an angelic language, and it's all
Mm.
frequency encoded. So with everything that I do, there's an activation or a transmission that is to be received.
Well, I want to understand what it means to be a seraphim and what it means, what you were doing when you, because there was a point where you were hanging out with your angelics, with your angelic family, like in that process of the healing where you were just with them. And if you would let us know what it was like to be with your back with your angelic family and what it means to be a seraphim within that experience.
You know what? Seraphim are stated to be in the throne of God, and I knew that to be the case even before I knew that. I had vivid images of being at the throne of God
Mm.
and being a protector and doing things, but not from that standpoint necessarily.
What did
It's
that
just,
look like to be at the, what's the throne of God look like?
for me, it was just, and okay, when I'll state this, it's also paradigm training as to how you experience something, right? Or how you
Mm.
see something. People will generally feel it in the same way, but if there's a visual, it's going to come from a context from within you, right? And so for me, it was like this, oh, like Gloria saying, but it was bright, and I just remember seeing kind of this throne and
An
this
actual
being,
throne.
like an actual throne,
Wow.
and this being that I couldn't quite see, but there was a form, like more of a physical form, but so bright that I was incapable of actually looking at it.
Mm.
But for me, it was like sitting in that space with my eyes closed and just this radiant light. And I've been there many times and felt that encompassed by an unspeakable radiant light that I can't even explain. And when I was talking to all of the angels when I was there, I think a lot of I think I was receiving a lot of about my mission. Here's why you're there, you know, like a
Mm.
remembrance, a mission, because it seemed like when I came back, all of a sudden things started to happen. But when I was there, it was very familiar. I was like, I'm home. You know, there was never anything like, where am I? Oh, this is really cool. It was just
Mm.
like I fit right in. I was talking to my peers, my colleagues, my friends, you know, whatever. And then I was yanked back into my physical body, basically, or sent back. Um, so it was very, very familiar. It's very familiar territory. The angels being with me is always very familiar. It's never been like, oh my God, it's angel or anything in that
Mm.
context. It's always just been,
Natural. This is
right?
natural.
It's a natural thing.
Linda, did you want to ask a question? I saw your hand pop up. No? Okay. You're muted. So if you are wanting to ask a
I'm
question.
muting. Okay. Yes, I do. It's a
Okay.
little tiny question. Not really. So again, um, having the experience of God and having a very descriptive experience of God, how do you, I think we struggle to find a definition. I think all the religions, all the things in the world are measly attempts to describe heaven, describe God, describe something that's indescribable. But if you're going to try, what would you do to actually describe your thoughts of what God is?
Oh, goodness. Well, uh, I have to tell you something that happened last year. Yeah. Before COVID. I was in a workshop, a Katawa level workshop, a Katawa level 4 workshop, because I had students that came in.
What's
And they were doing a
Katawa? What's
workshop.
Katawa?
A Katawa, yeah.
What's a Katawa? Let people know.
A Katawa is actually an ascension technology, but it can also be utilized for energetic healing and so forth. And I was in the workshop, I think it was that one, but I was in a workshop. And I remember having this experience because we were in a meditation of being able to travel astrally, like an astral journey type thing. And I wasn't able to keep with the rest, to voyage with the rest of the group. I was pulled into this space. And later I found it's called the White Room, and it's actually where God is. Terrifying. So I was pulled into this space, and it was indescribable. I felt, oh my goodness, the most immense pain and, oh, just pain. I can't think of the word. Every struggle that humanity has had within the act of pain and struggle existed in this space, and that was
Oh.
all that existed within this space. I could not get out of the space. My entire body was vibrating with an electrical current. I was in this space and just kind of like being struck by lightning and being there. And I'm like, I need to get out of this space. I need to leave, because I felt every single struggle and pain that has ever existed through humanity from the moment of our existence, right? Everything. And it was horrifying, but I understood it. I understood exactly what it was, and I could feel it, but I knew that it was somewhat in a muted state, because I would have just died if I could have felt it with its full intensity. And let me tell you, I felt it in a full intensity for me. I'm not even sure, it was sheer will of nature as to how I got out, because I was trapped in that space. And I didn't understand what was happening outside of that, right? And so I kind of slammed back in my body, and I just took a deep breath, and I just started bawling for minutes, talking about, oh my God, it was so sad, the pain and the agony and whatever. And Coyote was sitting there, was my teacher, my mentor, and he was doing something, because she went in, I guess he had said she went into the White Room, she's with God, right? And I came back, but it was just like, it took me several minutes after they brought my drum, and I was like drumming, trying to root myself. It took me so long to kind of really anchor back into my physical form and understand where I was. But that was an experience that I was supposed to have, because I was pulled there. I mean, it was just like, here's God, right? I'd never thought about God in that context, but what I understood was the reason that we are here within the inception of the world, right? Reality as it is that we are essentially like avatars of God because in order to not experience that loneliness was the word I was seeking, such a deep, profound loneliness and pain and struggle, entrapment, in order for God to not have that conscious awareness, then we are part of this dream. So we are these avatars where the individuations of God's consciousness are living here and having an experience of a life, and everything that we enjoy or don't enjoy, and all of that, that we are essentially like in a video game, like the avatars to have these experiences. So yeah.
What's blowing my mind is, and I think that because this is the first time I've ever heard this, and I've, been digging through all of this sort of material for decades. So I've never heard of the white room where God is and all the pain of humanity is simultaneously, because you would think that wherever God is, there is no experience of separation, there is no experience of pain, because God is oneness, God is light, God is all these things, but God is not going to be contending or, being surrounded by separation and pain. For me, my heart opens because I think, oh, wow, that's the first thing God is holding is our separation and pain. And he, it, she, whatever, is exceedingly aware of it and has a room for it. What's
Well,
your thought?
yeah, and I'm still kind of struggling with that experience. Uh, because you never really will know. But what I learned was it was so profound. I don't know that I will ever fully know until I leave this physical form truly what that meant. But there wasn't a
Mm,
separation in that we are individuations of God. So God is in all things, because for me, it was a higher level of consciousness to create this world, these worlds, and these beings, so that there wasn't an awareness of that pain and struggle and loneliness, right? So if you think about, God would be lonely, right? And I kept thinking, well, that's probably why God created the infinite source, infinite intelligence created all of this, because they were lonely. Could you imagine just being there? Right? Being alone, the only one, the only thing, right? And so there began the world through intention. And so that's kind of my take on it, that through this intention to not be lonely, to create all of this, to have some form of experience, right? We don't know about what's outside of outside of outside of outside. It boggles the mind. I struggled with that forever, and then I just said, you know what, it doesn't matter.
mm,
There's always something being created. And yeah, but that experience though, and I've since talked to a couple of people that have had that experience, the same experience,
mm,
but it was like a profound realization and change for me. And I was like, oh my God, I was tearful for days. I would struggle. Anything sad, a TV, a video, whatever, something someone said, I'd be like, "Ugh," right. But it was within me in that acknowledgement of the pain and the suffering, because that is ours. It's not
mm,
just God's, right? That's also taking on our pain and suffering as well.
mm.
And so that changed me. That changed my motivation. The angels said, well, we have, what you might consider doing. They're always telling me, they're not telling me what to do, but you might
Mm,
consider every time that you wake up in the morning, asking yourself, what is it that God wishes to experience today? Because each of us is God, right? Each of us is an individuation of that infinite intelligence, that infinite source. So within our experience, what is it that we all as one, we are not separate, in unity, wish to experience for that day? And so that has changed my perspective of what I do and how I do it and how I approach my day, right? It has changed, it's altered the pattern of my thoughts at times, right?
yeah, Linda, did you want to reflect on that? Because I feel like you had some, in your comments, I can see you've got some feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I've talked about this in the past, I've always had this this knowing, this awareness. And the way I described it was basically this, if I was going to use an analogy, that we come from this ocean of that is a collective of, and that it's like raindrops coming here, and it's for experiencing emotion, experiencing everything. It's to experience. And then as we, I dehydrate, or what is it? Not dehydrate, but we leave the earth, evaporate, go back up. Those experiences that we have go with us, and it increases the collective's awareness and understanding as a whole through our each individual experience. And for me, that's how I've always had this feeling of that, that relationship with God is us being just pieces, still being part of that whole, part of that water. But it's our ability to come here that we add to the whole experience, and here being wherever we choose to be.
What I would add to that is that, yes, but when we're talking about the experiences, what the angels wish everyone to know is that it happens in real time, because we are in a unified force, a unified field. So you don't, it's not that you're like bringing your experiences when you transition, you're suddenly bringing all of the experiences of a lifetime to God. We'll just say God, right? No, you're at each and every experience in real time is already going right to everything, to God.
Right. Well, because time is, it doesn't exist the way we think of time, but I think
what I was
it
gonna
is in the now.
Right. And they're always talking about be in the present moment, because the past no longer exists and the past does not belong in the present. And the future, there is just malleable. It's unlimited possibilities. So you need to remain within the present moment and just exist here and now, because who you are and what it is that you're doing and the direction in which you're going is already informing your future trajectory. So if you're casting out into the future, you're already inhibiting or creating resistance or about where it is you're going to end up, right? Because it's ever changing. But what the angels like to say about your water analogy, what they had shown me, which I love, was this big ocean, and this huge wave comes up to the shore, and a little bit of the water goes, and that little bit of water is incarnating you into human existence. So when you make your transition back, right, the wave comes in and gathers you up and takes you back out to sea, right? And I just thought that was it's very similar, but such a beautiful analogy.
Nice. Well, I wanted to ask you also, what does it, because in your bio it says you're a Nagual of, let me read it, if I can get it correct. Nagual of the inner,
A Nahual.
Nagual.
Essentially a healer shaman.
Okay, of the inner tonal light.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, because it's my understanding. It's like a Nagual is I'm going to say it wrong. I apologize, but is as a spirit guardian. So, do you feel like you're a guardian of the light, of the tonal light?
That sounds good.
You're like, sure, put that in my bio.
Yes, we all are.
Nice. So, but why did you choose that word Nagual?
Nahual?
Nagual.
It wasn't, it was chosen for me.
Okay.
I did not choose that. I choose nothing. So it's like everything that's in my bio, it's always like restructured or changed or reformed, and it as I evolve.
Okay.
And that is given, right? Yeah.
Okay. Well, so then what does it mean to be a conduit of the Elohim? Explain who the Elohim are.
The Elohim is basically the angelic realm where infinite intelligence, infinite source, God resides as well. Though, obviously, God is found within everything, everything in existence. But that within the angelic realm, that is where the Elohim is. So it's the divine order of the Elohim. So it's the It's all of the angels in their various hierarchies and so forth.
Oh.
So that is, how to word that? That is basically whom I work with. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's who you are. I mean, that's who you are. And when we were chatting in our pre-show talk, like you have memories of being Arcturian and of being these other ET beings, but because a lot of us identify, there's this whole thing about who is your star family, who are, where's your star origins. And you've had experiences as star beings, what we call star beings, one of the star nations. But even within that, you're still an angelic person, angelic being first.
We're many people at many times
Yeah,
as well. We have the parallel lives and so forth as well
right.
into physical form. So we have all of that, right? Uh, yeah, and so as that come, and it's so funny. So I'm going to say something, and I don't mean to. It's kind of like a lot of people get caught up in that, and I'm like, I don't really care. But what happens is when all of that comes forward, what I do care about is the information that comes forward that's of benefit, positive benefit to me in this moment in time, in this lifetime to carry on, right? So I don't go, a lot of people are really caught up in past lives and so forth, and they do like the past life regressions and all of that. Sometimes it can be, sometimes it can be something else. It can just be information you're pulling in, but it's not important. What the angels had told me, why would you even care about, because that's past. If there's something important that you need to know in order to be who it is you're meant to be in this lifetime, we'll bring that to you, or
Yeah.
that will come, that will arise from within. So as working with sound as a technology, that came from the Arcturian structure, right?
Mm,
And also the creation of sacred artifacts and ascension tools and courses that came from the Lemurians, right? That came forward.
mm,
And things came forward from my ancestors, the gifts and so forth of being a seer, a
mm,
prophetess, and all of that.
mhm.
Just allowing me to understand that this is who you are. This resides within your history, right? There's historical significance, right? So I only care about those things that, and I only respond to those things that actually arise or come forward that are sharing something with me I need to know, because those are palpable. Those, it's like here, right? It's handing you something. It's handing you a new understanding, new information that's to help and guide you along. I think for me, that is really all that's important. I don't care if I lived in Russia and I fought a war and all of this. To me, what difference does that make? And I think that it actually creates a distraction to
Mm.
who I am in this incarnation and the reason that I'm here, how I'm meant to serve.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you can talk about because you're using time words like history and past lives, and we have an experience in this dimension of linear time, even though time is all happening at once. Our linear minds don't really know how to grasp. My mind doesn't. Like I have some grasp of it, but that's part of being human is that you're not supposed to fully grasp it. Otherwise, it'd be really hard to be here. But like what I'm getting is that you are able to funnel in, and that's a two-way funnel system. Like not only are you funneling in the wisdom of being an Arcturian who knows how to use sound technology for very specific things, but the Arcturians also get to channel in Phyllis Douglas and say, oh, well, let's learn from Phyllis and channel in her energy about how to bring in the angelics. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's a multi-conduit system where we're all connecting to each other because we're all, simultaneously existing. And for me, the thing, what's relevant for me in terms of my simultaneous alternate past lives, whatever you want to call them, is it that, yeah, if there's any trauma that is still impacting, if there's a trauma going on in another lifetime that's impacting and informing this lifetime, it becomes relevant to understand it and heal it so that way we're no longer resonating that frequency of disconnection. And to me, that's like the relevance of knowing your alternate/past lives, is so that way you can come into balance.
Yes, and typically speaking, though, if that's something you need to know, those are the past lives that are going to express forward to share
Mm-hmm.
that information with you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found in my own life is that I didn't need to go seeking it. It came forward on its own. And that was a distinction that I wanted to make. I never sought thinking, I want to know about my past lives, or I want to know this or that, because there's an interest in that as well. And I have done it. I went and I got a past life regression, and I had this whole thing, and I was like, that's cool, but that didn't really resonate with who I am now in this time.
Mm-hmm.
And what the angels wanted to express about that was that if there's something that you need to know, if you have that trust and that faith, that information is going to come forward for you. And as we began to ascend and we began to awaken, the physical vehicle, this vessel, is like what they like to call a holy sepulcher. So if you envision it, like your feet that are rooted into the earth are like, the physical body is like a stem, and your feet are like the root of the chalice set upon the earth, and then the cup comes from here and up. And I've always had that in vision, because all that light is coming down through the crown, it's coming into the body. So when you begin to be enlightened, then there's a pressure that takes place, because you're filling the chalice, but you have to get rid of the present contents, right? And so in that's when emotions start to arise, or memories start to arise, past trauma. Those are the things that come forward that are important, that you're holding within, that need to be relinquished in whatever way, shape, or form, that is going to happen for you. I don't go seeking it, but I wait, and it comes up, and I'm like, oh, need to look at that, because there it is, right? It's like, whoops, there it is, right? And sometimes it's, whoops, there it is again, and
Yeah.
again, because there's
Right.
always different layers. And so I envision that light coming in, and then all of this stuff is being pushed away. And so that's how I've kind of voyaged through this journey, in that understanding that, okay, this is coming up for a reason. So I'm not going to wallow in it. I'm not going to push it back down.
Yeah.
I'm going to acknowledge it. And the other things that the angels want you to know is the light is taking care of all that for you. So if something comes forward past trauma, you don't have to be like, oh my God, and you dive right back into it. And they're like, oh, please don't do that. If you think about the pressure of water coming down, and the cup becomes full, so the contents like oil. So you know how oil rises to the surface? So if you think about all of these things that you're wanting to release and relinquish from your life as the oil that's rising up to the surface, and it's being skimmed off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Ooh, I like that. So I want that oil to rise to the surface and being gently skimmed off.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to work at it. It's like, you acknowledge it, and think, and you can express gratitude for it, because you always acted in a certain way. You did the best that you could. So no matter what it was, I'd say, oh, I acknowledge that, that sucked. So, thank you for having, thank you for helping me in the moment, but goodbye. And I would just kind of say that, or have a little ritual around it, whatever it is that you want to do. But you don't need to have a full-on visceral remembrance of things. And a lot of people get caught in a full-on visceral remembrance of past trauma and things that have happened in their life. So they just put it back down. They hold on to it.
Well, I think that's the importance of working with people like yourself, is because I think sometimes we don't know what to do with these things when they come up. And so you just start to loop in it, not intentionally, but it does have your attention, and whatever you focus on, you start to create more of, like wherever your focus goes, so does your energy, so does your creative power. And I think that's why it's important to be able to work with people who are able to help you skim it off the top, because sometimes we just don't get how to do that. I've had some, gosh, I've changed I feel like I've had so much healing in the last few months. Back in March, I was having these memories and I wasn't trying to reach for it, but there was an emotional thing coming through that needed to be addressed and needed to be healed. And it was all of these other lifetimes, just like soul wounds of abandonment, that, like abandonment in this incarnation, abandonment in that incarnation. And there was just this symphony, this cacophony of abandonment wounds that were like, here we are, and you need to look at us, and you need to grieve us and let us go. And part of that process was being able to say, okay, that happened, and yet what's good, what's working now, how am I loved now, and being able to balance it for myself so I could walk myself back away from the trauma and say, okay, that's there, but it's not the only thing that's there. I've got some leverage. I have some ability to move around and not just be like in the throes, in the thralls of the pain of separation. I wanted to ask you, because you've talked about this a couple of times, where your mother was a prophetess and you are a prophetess. So what does it mean to be a prophetess in your own definition? And then what do you see for our future as humanity from that gift of being a prophetess?
Well, as a prophetess, what the definition of that for me is that what happens for me is that something becomes known that will happen in the future, so that when I recognize it in the present, it changes my action. Or there is like a recognition of some sort. So often it happens for me in dreams. Like I'll have a dream like a few years back, and all of a sudden I'm in a workshop, like let's say Michael just spoke, and I went, ooh. And I said, okay, now Angela's going to say this. Oh, and now Sue's going to say this. And it happens. It's like a recognition. So for me, it's always served as like much gratitude. I know these are points that are being shared with me to recognize that I'm on the right path, because I already had a path when I came here. So often things that are going to happen in the future show up a couple little years later, and then I recognize and I went, oh, this is like I'm on, I'm this on a plateau. Like, okay, this is a next step. Okay, I know I'm on the right step. So that's always served me. There's been a couple times where I've had an understanding of what was going to happen to someone if they did something, and calling up a friend like, don't get on that plane. Right, something's going to happen type of thing. That's happened a few times, but I never do. There's been acknowledgments, like with my daughter, of something that's going to happen, so you need to circumvent that, right? So this needs to happen right now to circumvent that. But I have never been given like the future of humanity. And now here's why.
Okay.
Nobody knows.
That's such an honest answer. That's the most honest answer I've heard.
So if I go to a reading and someone tells me like a future thing that's beyond a couple months or something, I'm like, I'm not going to believe you. Here's why. There's unlimited possibilities, and the future is malleable. So the only important thing is the present moment. So if someone tells you this is what's going to happen to the world in the future, okay, that's fine and dandy, but that just means you have to change something now. Because it's malleable, you would change something now. So, okay, I could lie and say I have had future things, acknowledgement happen, but I can also view the changes, right? It's not, so I don't hold on to those, because for me, it may happen and hopefully it doesn't, or it may not, right? And so your job when you envision something like that is to do all that you can in the present moment to change the construct, to change the structure being built. For me, everything has a construct. So if there's a certain circumstance, there's something that was built, a construct was built. So in this moment, I'm going to start pulling bricks out, right? I'm going to start like loosening up the foundation in any way, shape that I can, so that that construct crumbles before it's actually created and manifested.
Wow, that's a really great visual. I love that idea. So you can energetically sense or see the construct, and then you can just decide to disassemble it before it hits the manifestation frequency.
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
strong. Well, Miss Linda, the next thing I want to do is ask our lovely Phyllis if she will be a conduit and bring in that angelic symphony she carries within. Were there any other questions that you had for before we move forward, Linda?
I think we've covered all of mine, and I haven't gotten any from the audience. They're just enthralled with what you're saying and saying this is
Mm-hmm.
one of our best conversations. So
Love it.
thank you.
Mm.
And I'm looking forward to the vocalization and the sound.
What comes next?
Mhm.
Beautiful. All right. There will be a moment of preparation. I'm going to start the drum.
Okay. I think for us to ask everyone to just let yourself kind of sit back, lean back, lay back, soften your heart, soften your mind, find a receptive state, and just be open to your highest good coming through this lovely Vox Angelus conduit that we have with us today.
Can you hear that clearly?
I can.
Sapaka ujamatra edere sud karabupi ramasotere siminda hare gutro sutenana de keresi jambode ka tikere no o jerebe kijum tratiem kachere hund kakayeru sunda ha
to speak. I just wanted to be quiet. Next. That was tremendous. Definitely. This is amazing. Your gifts are amazing. Thank you for doing that with us.
You're welcome.
We would love to hear people's comments about what that was for you. Yes, I'm going to try to be able to focus on the show. That was amazing. Right, so let me do this. Apologize for taking a moment. All right, so let's do this. Phyllis, do you have anything that you can that people know about? Obviously, we have your link down in our description box. So is there anything that you want to let people know about working with you?
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't hear you very well. You're cutting in and out.
Oh, I'm cutting in and out. Is that better?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's worse.
Better? That's worse. You blew out my stuff, Phyllis.
I've been known to do that. So are you wanting me to share anything that I would like to share? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, is that better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just unplugged my. I'm going to blame that on you. Would you let us know what you have coming? If you have anything coming up for people to participate in, or sessions, classes, teachings, offerings.
Yeah, I have a podcast called 11 Moments with God, which started a while back and I'm finally getting around to it's actually up and so forth. So and all the information about that is on my website. I should now be posting my first podcast up here within the next couple of weeks. But we're coming off of COVID, so I do have classes and workshops that I will be doing both in person and online, which are kind of being connected. So I think that the best way that people can actually find me and what it is that I do is on my website, which is phyllisdouglas.com. Okay. There's also voxangelus.com, which leads to my page about a lot of more of the vocal things that I do. But I do have that coming up within the ascension healing technology, the Akadawa. I do that both in person and online as well. One of the things that I'm doing with the Divine Order of the Elohim is that they are manifesting ancient sacred artifacts for healing, ascension, and so forth into the physical world through me. So I have my Etsy page, which is called Alchemical Sacreds, plural.com. And that's where people can go if they want more information about these spiritual and healing tools that they can utilize in their lives and so forth. But I do have for people that are local, I have an upcoming fully embodied encounter with the infinite through energy and sound, which is going to be happening on October 2nd at a place called Live Arts, Los Angeles. Okay. And I'm trying to get more into doing some online kind of sound transmission work as well. Yeah.
Cool. That's great. My head is just like, boing. It's really hard to focus right now. Linda, did you have anything that, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
And I will offer that I do online and in-person sessions. I do soul resonance alignments with the Divine Order of the Elohim. Which is clearing and bringing in any type of initiations, healing work, ancestral work, all of that are encompassed within that session. And typically I do those online. So all of that can be found at my website. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Excellent. Miss Linda, did you have something? Oh, you can't hear you either. You blew us all out, Phyllis. What did you do to us? She's not even muted and I can't hear her.
I've done that before. I'm sorry.
Wow. I've never experienced this. Yeah, Linda's not muted, but we can't hear her.
No.
All right. Sorry, Miss Linda. Okay, you can put it in the comments and I can say it if you want to share it in our Zoom chat, I can say it for you. So I will say this while Miss Linda is doing that. I do want to thank all of our live streamers that we had on today. We had Laura, we had Amy, and we've had Brianna. So thank you all for being with us and being part of the live chat. That is fantastic. And then we've got, Linda was saying that it resonated in her pineal gland.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm having a really hard time focusing at this point. It's because it's like kind of blew me open a little bit
Yeah,
there.
a lot of my work actually works on people's halos. If you know, one of the things I will share quickly is that those old Baroque paintings, you see like the halos around people. Well, we
Mhm.
have those halos, and the integration of that halo is the pineal gland at the center of the head, but also the crown portal, the amygdala, the mouth of God right at the base of the neck, and the
Oh,
third eye. And all of those expand outwards into our halo. So the halo is a real thing. But we don't see like these, golden.
yeah, it's not up here, it's around the entire,
It's actually around the head. Yeah.
I can feel that.
Yeah. And
That's
so much of my work, because that's how you receive the activations or the transmissions, is halo to halo with the infinite, with the angels. And so a lot of people feel that radiance, that expansion within their head, because the the crown is not a chakra. It's actually a portal, so it's a hole, and there's a channel there, and so that's where you're receiving from.
that's beautiful. And I love that explanation where it integrates all the energy centers in the head, because I think there's so much more for us to explore. Gosh, we're just waking up. So let me go ahead and get us wrapped up here. And also a thank you to Miss Mel for joining us in the chats as well. Um, let me say that again, we have all of Lois's links down below in our box. And I just shared the Etsy one in our live stream, so you can grab that there. And again, please, if this was a blessing for you, go ahead and share this content with those that you know would benefit from it and would just be blessed by it. I think it was an incredible experience today. So, yep, hit that notification bell, share our content, become a subscriber, join us on Facebook. And thank you, Miss Linda. I know we can't hear from you anymore, but thank you for being with us today. And thank you, Lois. We're so grateful that you were here. What a blessing from
Phyllis.
heaven it's been.
Yeah, you're calling me Lois now.
Oh, Lois, I say Lois Phyllis. I'm so sorry. Lois Hollis is one of our buddies as well. I'm sorry. Thank you, Miss Phyllis. I'm
I
sorry.
really blew you away.
I'm saying I'm having a hard time focusing. You scrambled me a little, not just my mic, but you scrambled my brain a little bit. I'm so sorry about that. But it's your fault. It's your fault. So thank you, Phyllis. We loved having you on the show. Will you come back and visit us
Thank you.
again?
I would love to. I would love to. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, everyone, have a fantastic day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are at, and we will talk to you next time. Much love and much blessings. I'm going to stop talking because I can't do it anymore. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that was awesome.